I'm Callie. This is CRK Training, and I'm here today with Larry Whitesell of Gaited Horsemanship. So thank you for taking the time to let me ask you some questions.
My pleasure.
So I'd like to start by, could you tell us just a little bit about what you do?
I just travel around the country, and we actually go to Europe and Canada and do gaited horse clinics.
Yeah.
But we often have trotting horses at our clinics, but mostly it's gaited horses. We're just trying to teach gaited people how to train their horses and get them to gait without force or hard equipment.
Yeah.
We're mostly just teaching horses balance and teaching them how to engage their hind end and be soft. And if a horse is genetically bred to gait, they'll gait. If you can energize the hind end and get them forward, but teach them to be soft so you don't have to have equipment to hold them back, they're going to gait. Or you can drive them forward and hold them back with a bit. And if you can get enough speed to get the hind end energized, they will gait. So most horses in the gaited world now, they are taught to gait from speed. In other words, you keep driving them forward and adding speed until they get gait. The problem is, if you haven't trained the horse correctly, he's going to push on your hands or run through your hands. So then you've got to have a strong piece of equipment on his head to hold him back. And so essentially you're riding the horse with the brakes and the accelerator on. And so when you have conflicting aids, you get behavior problems. So many gaited horses are like buddy sour, or they rush the bridle, or the riders consider them behavior problems, but really the horse is just being a horse. They skipped the things that he needed to know before they taught him to gait. And I just keep talking, but when you're training a young horse to gait that's genetically bred to gait, it takes different muscles to gait than it does walking around in the field. So you can't just, in 2 weeks after you get on the horse, or a month, start driving him up in the bridle and expect him to gait, because he hasn't developed the muscles to hold the gait. And so again, people put strong equipment on the face and they have to hold the horse in gait. So if you're riding your gaited horse and you have to hold contact all the time, you're essentially holding the horse in gait. He's not offering the gait and gaiting from balance and using his own muscle. And it's going to take several months to develop those muscles so the horse can gait free and easy and fluid and be comfortable in his body.
Yeah. It sounds really similar to some of the stuff that's done in some other horse breeds or sports too. Is there anything that you feel is different about working a gaited horse as opposed to a regular three-gaited horse?
Well, I'll probably get hung for this, but we train gaited horses exactly the same way we train a trotting horse. If we put them in balance and teach them to be soft, and we explain the bridle and the aids to them, and we get them forward so that they know what they need to know. Their genes tell them, if their genes tell them trot, they trot. And if their genes tell them to gait, they gait. If you put a horse in balance and train it correctly, which would be just like any correctly trained trotting horse, and not all trotting horses are trained correctly, but the horse is going to offer the best gait he can do. And it's going to be smoother than a forced gait. but it's the best gait he can offer at that time. But see, too many times we read our breed brochures and we say, well, this isn't the gait he's supposed to be doing. You know, he's a walker or a fox. So then we start doing things to alter the gait. So now we are man-making the gait instead of letting the horse do the gait that he can offer and do today. You know, and as time goes on and we develop him and he gets stronger and better balanced, his gait will get more even and softer and more forebeat, smoother. But I see so much in the gaited world where we read the breed brochures, and like Jennifer and I are told all the time, our horses are smoother than anybody's that I see, but people say, well, that's not the signature gait. Well, that's the gait the horse thought he could do. That's not the gait that some board decided that he should do. You understand?
Yeah, I do. And I heard you talking earlier, and I also, you know, what I had read about your background is you've had a lot of training with some classical dressage masters.
Yes. Jennifer and myself and Russell Terry, who is a trainer with us, and we have some other trainers, but mostly the three of us have gone and spent a lot of time with several different classical trainers. Almost all the people that we've studied with are people that have studied with Nuno Oliveira. So they're all pretty consistent in what they tell us. And lightness is very important. And there is a difference between lightness and softness. You know, you can get lightness with a severe piece of equipment, but softness, that's all through inside the horse's body and the way he uses his joints and moves, and he's more beautiful in his movement.
Yeah, I love that differentiation. That's good. So when you're riding classical dressage, or you know, you're riding a trotting horse and then you ride a gaited horse, is there much difference in, say, how you position your body, how you ride the movement of a gaited horse opposed to that?
There's no difference in the way we sit or position our body, but you ride the movement that you're asking for. Like if you ride trotting horses, you don't ride canter the same way you ride trot. You ride the movement. You follow the horse. And so one big problem, I think, in the gaited horse world is too many people just sit on their backs because they are smooth and easy to ride. Riders are, I don't know any other way to say it, lazy. They just sit on their horse's back. They don't actively follow the horse's movement and encourage the movement. So then many horses end up pacing and they complain about pace. But if you sit on their backs with a dead seat, the horse is going to pace.
So with the gaited horses, and I missed the first day of your clinic, but from being and the riders in here, I'm taking it's the same principles of, in order to have good free-forward movement from the horse, you want the horse to learn how to lift their back, stretch forward with their neck. Is that true for gaits?
We'd like them to telescope their neck and lift their back. And we want them to bend in their hind end joints so that they can lift their back. You know, a lot of riders that come to our clinics, they think if they throw the reins away, the horse puts his head down, so he's round. But he's not. He's round like a cat. You know, a cat lifts his back, but there's no rotation of the pelvis and no lifting of the withers. So if the horse doesn't step under with the hind legs and flex his joints, there's no real rounding of the body or the back. So there's no push from the hind legs forward. So if you go to a lot of the gaited horse breed shows, the horses, they swing with their hind legs like pendulums. There's no flexion. And they stride way up. And, well, if a horse swings his hind leg like a pendulum forward, the pendulum swings equally out behind. So that means one leg is always out behind him, which means he's on the forehand.
Yeah.
And his legs are just thrusting him forward, which throws him on the forehand, instead of his hind legs carrying him forward. And that's a big thing that we get probably the most argument from people about. But the argument isn't which one's right. The argument should be which one makes the horse feel better in his body. You know, which one is better for the horse, which one's more healthy, which one makes him use his joints in a more healthy way.
Yeah.
That should be the argument.
Yeah.
But it's not.
So what first got you interested in specializing with the gaited breeds?
I used to show gaited horses.
Yeah.
And, you know, I did real well. I made a good living. But my horses were really trained well and could win and do anything I asked. But I didn't feel like my horses really liked me. And so I thought I would just check it out. And so I went to this clinic, this guy, Dominique Barbier. That's who I learned from first. I watched him ride his horses, and you know how when you come home, your dog greets you and he's just happy to see you? I thought his horses were like a dog. They just loved him. And I thought, my horses don't like me like that. I want my horses to like me like that and be glad. And so I went and started learning from him, and that kind of started it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So what is, if there's maybe one kind of main thing that you could tell riders, and any rider, whether it's, you know, a gaited horse rider or a trotting horse rider, what's kind of the one thing that you could feel would be most important for riders to understand?
Well, you need to sit correct so that you can give your aids correct. Because I think the most important thing, and I think the reason most trail riders have trouble, they really don't understand how to communicate with their horse with their aids. And they don't teach their horses what their aids mean. Like, you know, yesterday in the clinic, at the end, I had people, I would say, can you pick his right foot up and front foot and set it on 3 o'clock? Can you take his left hind foot and step toward 2 o'clock? Can you pick any foot up on your horse and set it on any number of the clock you want? If you can't, you don't know how to control his feet with your aids. And you've got to get very smooth at that. And when you are, your horse will, I think, always obey you. Because he knows whether you can drive or not. He knows if you can, and he knows if you can't.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The one question that I also always like to ask is, what is it about the horses that has kept you in it? And, you know, it's obviously been your career and your passion.
Well, I like doing clinics and seeing horses that are worried and or troubled, and you know, anyone that comes to the clinic is really wanting to help their horse, or they wouldn't be at the clinic. And to be able to change horses, make changes in horses, and see the horse get softer in his face and softer in his body, that's really a rewarding thing. And probably 50% of the people that come to the clinic will go home and work on it. 50% of them will say this is too much trouble.
For you, what's been maybe one of the most challenging horses or just interesting horses that you've gotten to work with?
You mean breeds or?
No, just like an individual. Like, is there a story you can think of a horse that really changed or...
Well, when I started doing this and I was still showing, I got a little bit of a reputation of being able to fix troubled horses. So I ended up taking 4 or 5 different horses over the course of 2 or 3 years that had been through, one of them been through 6 trainers, and the trainers had said the horses were untrainable and made them national champions. But the best one was I made one so the owner could rode it and made it a national champion.
Yeah.
And so if you can turn a horse around like that a lot of trainers think is not salvageable, the difference is when you start training a horse according to the way he works biomechanically, you can turn him around.
Yeah.
If you think you're going to take one of these troubled horses and run them around and make them submit, the reason they're troubled horses is they don't submit. They have a high degree of self-preservation.
Yeah.
You got to convince the horse that you're doing it for him.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you want to add or you want to tell folks?
That's all I can think of.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Taking the time.
Thank you for having me.